Good day, everyone. By the way, I am teacher Emmeline Elikio. I am teaching Understanding the Self. I am a graduate of Bachelor of Secondary Education, major in Social Science. So, hello, everyone. We are going to discuss the sociological perspective of self. So, first, let's define sociology. A sociology is a social science that studies human societies, their interactions, and the processes that preserve and change them. It does this by examining the dynamics of constituents part of societies such as institutions, communities, population, and gender, racial or age groups. Sociology also studies social status or stratification, social movements, and social change, as well as societal disorder in the form of crime, deviance, and revolution. So when we talk about sociology, it involves the environment, or it talks about environment, how environment affects social beings and us human beings. Take note of that, class. So in here, self, society, and culture. So what is the connection of self? We're talking about self here to society and the culture. How self adapt culture. So let's first define what is self. So self is always unique and has its own identity. I already told this or mentioned this through the first topic, the philosophical perspective that self is unique. Another is self is self-contained and independent. Yes, self is very independent. As especially students, you need to be independent. So in understanding yourself, you need to be independent. That's why it is already mentioned here that self is contained and independent. Another is self is unitary, in that is the center of all experiences and thoughts that run through a certain person. Next is self is private, our alone time or our own. The social constructionist perspective is argue that the self should not be seen as a static entity that says constant, true, and true. Rather, the self has to be seen as something that is constant struggle with external reality and is malleable in its dealing with society. External reality in its dealing with society. Another is self is always in participation with social life and its dealing with the society. So take note, class, that participation is dealing with the society. Next is the sociological perspective of the self. It is based on the assumption that behavior is influenced by group of life. Is this just an assumption or not? Of course, it is not an assumption. It's the human behavior affects or influence our group of life. Another is let's study the idea of need and Cooley. Need and Cooley, the self does not depend on biological predispositions, sense of self, emerge as individual partakes in the society, modern society, and individual that seeks for solid and stable self-identity. So the idea of need and Cooley is the sense of self, and it is not just depending on the biological predisposition. There is also an effect of the environmental predisposition. So take note of this, class, that biological and environmental needs to attach each other so that this idea of need and Cooley, the culture, has very big impact on how we understand self, on how culture affects self. Take note of that, class. Next is Charles Cooley. Charles Cooley is the looking glass self, highlights that the people whom a person interacts with become a mirror in which he or she views himself or herself. The self identity or self image, achieved through a triple event like presents, perceives, and creates. So take note of this looking glass self. You will look yourself through mirror. You will act through your behavior. Is that clear? Next, there is here John is a math professor in a Catholic university for more than a decade now. John has a beautiful wife, Joanne, which he met in college. Joanne was John's first and last girlfriend. Apart from being husband, John is also blessed with two doting kids, a son and a daughter. He also sometimes serves in the church too as a lector and a commentator. When John is in the university, he conducts himself in a matter that befits his title as a professor. Are we being hypocritical in doing so? Are we even conscious of our shifting selves? Is the behavior of John acceptable and expected? Why? There is a question here that what are the three characteristics that John portray? First is as a husband, second is a commentator, third is a father. So take note of this, the the three characteristic of John is very different. They have different characteristics. John have different characteristics. Example is as a father, he is He is a lovable father. As a husband, a loving husband. As a commentator, he befits his title. So according to Moss, every self has two faces. Yes, we have two faces, outside and inside. So Moy refers to a person's sense, who he is, his body, and his basic identity, his biological giveness. Next is persona is composed of the social concept of what it means to be who he is. It means to live in a particular institution, a particular family, a particular religion, a particular nationality, and how to behave given the expectation and influence from others. So in persona, here is it depends on the environment where you are. Our persona can be illustrated between cross-cultural. Language is another interesting aspect of this social constructivism. It is also, if a self is born into a particular society or culture, the self will have to adjust according to its exposure. Another is the self and the development of the social world. How do children grow up and become social beings? How can a boy turn out to be just like an ape? How do twins coming out from the same mother turn out to be terribly different when given up for adoption? So take note class that how can a boy turn out to be just like an ape, or how do children grow up and become a social beings? On how they grow on and where they grow. Take note of that. Next is the reasons is the Mead and Vygotsky. Human persons develop with the use of language acquisition or dislad and interaction with others. The way that we process information is normally a form of an internal dialogues in our head. Cognitive and emotional development of a child is always a mimicry of how it is done in the social world, in the external reality where he is in. So according to George Herbert Mead, a sociologist from the late 1800s, is well known was this theory of the social self, which includes the concept of self, the me, and the I. In this lesson, we will explore Mead's theory and gain better understanding of what is meant by the terms me and I. We will discuss the concept derived out of Mead's work of the looking glass self. Mead's work focuses on the way in which the self is developed. Mead's theory of the social self is based on the perspective that the self emerges from social interactions, such as observing and interacting with others, responding to others' opinion about oneself, and internalizing external opinions and internal feelings about oneself. The social aspect of self is an important distinction because other sociologists and psychologists of Mead's time felt that the self was based on biological factors and inherited traits. According to Mead, the self is not there from birth, but it is developed over time from social experiences and activities. So according to George Herbert Mead, that self is not there from birth, but it is developed over time from social experiences. So as we grow older, our self be molded by our social experiences. The development of the self. According to Mead, the three activities develop the self is language, play, and games. Language develops by allowing individuals to respond to each other through symbols, gestures, words, and sounds. Language conveys other attitudes and opinions towards a subject or the person. Emotions such as anger, happiness, and confusion are conveyed through language. So in language, how we learn or how we develop as a human being is first we need to develop the language or to understand the language and how to say a word. Another is play. Play develops self by allowing individuals to take on different roles, pretend and express expectations of others. Play develops oneself's consciousness through role playing. During role play, a person is able to internalize the perspective of others and develop an understanding of how others feel about themselves and others in a variety of social situations. Another is games. Games develop self by allowing individuals to understand and adhere to the rules of the activity. Self is developed by understanding that there are rules in which one must abide by in order to win the game or be successful at any activity. Let's go to the two sides of self, the me and the I. According to Mead's theory, the self has two sides or faces, me and I. The me is considered the socialized aspect of the individual. So this means the outside aspect of ourself. The me represent learned behaviors, attitudes, and expectations of others and of society. This is sometimes referred to as the generalized other. The me is considered a phase of the self that is in the past. The me has been developed by the knowledge of society and social interactions that the individual has gained. Social interaction. So this me is outside who gained social interactions, who gained behaviors, who gained attitudes and expectation, while the I, therefore, can be considered the present and future phase of the self. The I represents the individual's identity based on the response to the me. The I says, okay, society says I should behave and socially interact one way, and I think I should act the same, or perhaps different, and that notion becomes self. The me and the I have a didactic relationship like system of checks and balances. The me exercises societal control over oneself. The me is what prevents someone from breaking the rules or boundaries of societal expectations, while the I allows the individual to still express creativity and individualism and understand when to possible bend and stretch the rules that govern social interactions, that the I and the me make up the self. Another class is human mind as something that is made constituent through language as experience in the external world and as encountered in dialogues with others. Notice how little children are fond of playing role play with their toys. Notice how they make scripts and dialogues for their toys as they play with them. Yes, class, imagine a child playing her own toy. How can a child make a story on that toy, right? Just like an example that we're going to play. Where are you? I am going to find you. No, I'm here. Just like that, class. Those 1 year old, 2 year old child can make a stories on how they play. So at that age, their self or their mind is responding. Next is self in families. The kind of family that we are born in and the resources available to us, human, spiritual, economic, will certainly affect us and the kind of development that we will have as we go through life. Learning, therefore, is critical in our capacity to actualize our potential of becoming humans, in trying to achieve the goal of becoming a fully realized human. A child enters a system of relationship, most important of which is the family. So, as self, how we develop self, of course, it will start first in our family or in our home. There, we will going to start to mold, to encounter, to develop our family, ourselves, I should say. So, family is the first organization that we are going to start to develop the self. Next, human person learns the way of living and therefore their selfhood by being in a family. Without a family, or biologically and sociologically, a person may not even survive or become a human person. So take note, class, that if there's no family, a self or a human being cannot survive. Take note of that. Gender, next is the gender and the self. Gender is one of those loci of the self that is subject to alteration, change, and development. People fought hard for the right to express, validate, and assert their gender expression. So that's why we have here the LGBTQs. They are the best example of this gender and the self. They are suffering discrimination because they are not free to reveal who they are. That is one of these example of gender and the self. Next, society forces a particular identity unto us depending on our sex and or gender. Husbands are expected to provide from the family. The eldest man in a family is expected to head the family and hold in it mother's role of taking care of children. Young women are encouraged to act like fine ladies, are trained to behave in a fashion that befits their studies status as women in society. Men are taught to behave like a man, like holding in one's emotion, being tough, fatalistic, not to worry about danger and admiration for hard physical labor. So take note the different role of a boy and a girl or a sex of a mother and a husband, a young woman and a man. Take note of their roles. The sense of self that is being taught make sure that an individual fits in a particular environment. This particular this is dangerous and detrimental in the goal of truly finding oneself. Self-finding, self-determination, and growth of the self, gender has to personally discovered and asserted and not dictated by the culture and the society. So be your own. Be our own as long as we are happy of having of who we are. Let's enjoy life. So that's all the topics of the sociology. Thank you for listening. I hope you understand. Thank you and God bless.